A book on the shelf is just paper. A book in your mind is power. Welcome to Season 1, Money and Mindset. We are here to rewrite your internal script. Let's decode.
Most people believe they make decisions.
But most decisions are made around them.
Influence isn't persuasion.
It's the architecture of yes.
And the uncomfortable part, it works best on intelligent people because they're better at rationalizing.
Today we are decoding influence. The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini.
This season is Money and Mindset. So we'll notice where these triggers reshape money, time, and identity without reducing the book to finance.
Not as a sales book, not as a manipulation manual.
But as a map of the human autopilot, the exact moments where choice becomes reflex.
By the end, we'll build one filter that reveals when your yes isn't yours.
Okay, let's break this down. Because the central idea in Cialdini's work, the one that really changes how you see things, is that our choices aren't usually, well, they're not fully reasoned.
Exactly. They're often these mechanical responses to very specific, very narrow triggers. And to really get it, you have to start where he starts, which is with animal behavior.
Right, this concept of the fixed action pattern.
That's the bedrock. Animal behaviorists saw that different species would just run these incredibly complex routines, almost like a recording was playing.
A click-whir mechanism, as he calls it.
Click-whir. The click is one tiny specific thing in the environment, the trigger feature, and whir. The whole complicated behavioral tape just starts rolling.
And it's not based on the whole situation, just that one tiny piece of data.
The classic example he gives is the mother turkey. It's almost funny how clear it is. If a natural enemy, like a stuffed polecat, gets near her nest, she attacks viciously.
As she should. That's the right program to run.
But then the researchers put a small speaker inside that same stuffed enemy, and they play the cheep, cheep sound of a baby turkey.
And what happens?
Her entire response just flips. She stops the attack, and she actually gathers the polecat underneath her, trying to mother it.
Wow. So that one sound completely overrides the visual reality of her mortal enemy.
Completely. And if you turn the sound off, she immediately attacks it again. It's a perfect automaton. Her maternal instinct is controlled by that one sound.
It's just a reflexive default setting.
And you see this everywhere. A male robin won't attack a perfect replica of another male robin if it's missing the red breast feathers.
But it will attack.
It will furiously attack just a clump of red feathers on its own. It's not fighting the bird, it's fighting the color. The trigger.
It feels a little condescending to apply that to humans, though. We like to think we're more sophisticated than that.
Of course. But Cialdini's argument is that we absolutely have these same programs. And, it's not a failure of our intelligence. It's a necessary adaptation.
Because the world is just too complex.
It's completely overwhelming. This is what he calls the human autopilot. We have to rely on these mental shortcuts, these stereotypes and rules of thumb, just to function.
And that need is only getting more intense.
Right. As the world gets, in his words, more intricate and variable, our dependence on these shortcuts goes way up. If we stop to analyze every single piece of information for every decision,
we'd be paralyzed. We'd just stand there cataloging, appraising, and calibrating, while the moment to act just speeds past.
So using a single feature isn't lazy. It's an efficiency hack. It's betting the odds.
Like the famous story of the turquoise jewelry.
Exactly. The tourists know nothing about turquoise, so what's their shortcut? Price equals quality.
Expensive must mean good.
So when the shop owner accidentally doubles the price of some cheap jewelry, it sells out instantly. At the lower price, nobody wanted it.
And the key insight there for our theme of money and mindset is that even though that was a bad decision in that one instance,
over the long run, for someone with no expertise, betting that price signals quality is actually the most rational approach they have. The occasional mistake is just the cost of doing business in a complex world.
Okay, so we need these shortcuts. We rely on them, which leads right to how they get exploited. The jujitsu principle.
I love that term because it's not about using brute force. You're not trying to overpower someone with a better argument.
Yeah, you're just using their own mental momentum against them.
You structure the request so that it activates one of these powerful natural tendencies. You're using the power that's already there. It's manipulation, as he says, without the appearance of manipulation.
And the person being influenced, the victim, They don't feel manipulated.
No, they feel like they chose. They think their decision was determined by natural forces, not by the person who's profiting from it. The environment was designed, but they think they just decided.
So let's look inside that mechanism. Because it's not as simple as trigger, then compliance. There's a crucial step in the middle, one that intelligent people are especially good at.
Yes, and this is one of the most important takeaways from the book. Smart people aren't immune. In fact, intelligence can make the effect even worse.
Why?
It's the rationalization. Once the trigger fires and the automatic impulse happens, a smart person is an absolute master at building a logical-sounding fortress of justifications around that choice after the fact.
So you don't need to win the debate beforehand. You just need to get them to commit to make that first move.
And their own intelligence will then defend that position to the death. Sometimes making the choice is actually a defense against having to think too hard.
That's what happened at the Transcendental Meditation lecture.
A perfect example. So Cialdini is there with his friend, a logician, who proceeds to just systematically demolish the presenter's entire argument. He proves it's all contradictory and illogical.
So logically, everyone should have walked out.
Instead, there was a stampede to the back of the room to sign up. People were handing over their money faster after the argument was destroyed.
That makes no sense.
It does when you hear why. One person said, "I knew I'd better give them my money now, or I'd go home and start thinking about what he said and never sign up."
Wow. So they were actively running away from having to think.
They were running to evade the rigors of continuing thought. The program was a safe hiding place. Compliance was easier than facing the hard truth that they were still searching for answers.
It protected their identity as a person who has found the solution. It saved them the mental cost.
You see this impulse then identity shift at the racetrack too. Bettors are really uncertain right before they place a bet.
But the second the money is down.
30 seconds later, they are measurably, significantly more confident that their horse is going to win. The horse hasn't changed. The race hasn't changed.
But their commitment has changed. And now their beliefs have to line up with their actions.
It's classic cognitive dissonance. I've committed, so I must have had good reasons. And if I didn't, my brain will invent them right now.
Which brings us to the really sad story of Sarah and Tim.
It's a tragic example of this in a relationship. Sarah breaks off a good engagement to go back to Tim, who promises to marry her and stop drinking.
But of course he doesn't.
Within months, he's broken both promises. Objectively, she made a terrible decision.
But when Cialdini checks in 2 years later, she's not just with him.
She's more devoted than ever. She has literally manufactured a new reality where her bad choice was actually a good one. She says it taught her he was number one in her heart. She's created all these new positive qualities for him to justify her commitment.
She's built an entire emotional support system to shield her from the troublesome realization that she made a huge mistake.
Her mind is protecting her identity at a massive cost to her life.
And this whole process, this architecture, is often set up using something you mentioned earlier, the perceptual contrast principle.
Yes, and this is one of the most subtle weapons because it's just based on how our brains work. It's not an argument, it's just sensory science.
The hand in the water experiment.
Right. Put one hand in hot water, one in cold. Then put both in lukewarm water. The hand from the cold water feels like it's in hot water, and the hand from the hot water feels like it's in cold.
The lukewarm water hasn't changed, but our perception of it has, based on what came immediately before.
Exactly. And this gets weaponized with money all the time. Retail clothing stores know this. They always tell staff to sell the expensive item first.
Sell the $495 suit before you show them the sweater.
Because after you've just anchored your mind to a nearly $500 purchase, a $95 sweater doesn't seem that expensive by comparison.
But if you showed them the $95 sweater first, that would feel like a big purchase.
And the suit would feel astronomical after that. They're not changing the prices. They're changing your frame of reference for what money means in that moment.
Real estate agents do this with setup properties.
Oh, absolutely. They'll show you a couple of overpriced, rundown houses dumps first. They have no intention of selling you those.
The goal is to pollute your frame of reference.
So that when they finally show you the ordinary, reasonably priced house they actually want to sell, it looks incredible by comparison. You're not judging it on its own merits anymore. You're judging it against the dump you just saw.
So we've seen the mechanism. Now let's decode the 7 triggers themselves. We should be clear, this isn't a list of tactics. It's a system of vulnerabilities that hijack our resources, our money, time, identity.
Our agency. And what makes them so powerful is that they're usually good guides for our behavior. The shortcut normally works. The exploitation happens when that trigger is faked or misapplied.
Let's start with the big one, reciprocity. What's the core principle there?
It's the obligation to repay a gift, a favor, or even a concession. And it's maybe the most powerful because it's the foundation of human society. Division of labor, mutual aid, none of it works without the rule of reciprocity.
We're just hardwired to repay our debts.
Deeply. But the vulnerability is that it can be triggered by an unsolicited gift. You didn't ask for it, but now you feel you owe something. It steals your agency.
The Reagan study showed this perfectly.
Right. A researcher, Joe, buys a subject a 10-cent Coke, totally unasked for. Later, Joe asks the subject to buy some raffle tickets.
And the people who got the unsolicited Coke bought way more tickets.
Way more. And it didn't matter if they even liked Joe. The power of the obligation was stronger than the influence of liking. It was just a debt that had to be cleared.
The Hare Krishnas famously weaponized this at airports.
They did. They learned to just force a flower into someone's hand. Even if you tried to give it back, the rule was triggered. The momentary sense of debt was enough to dramatically increase donations.
And that pressure to comply steals your time. It's immediate.
You see it at the highest levels of politics with log rolling. Lyndon Johnson was a master in this because he had spent decades building a massive bank of favors he could call in to pass legislation.
It wasn't about the quality of his arguments.
It was about the weight of the reciprocal debt. Contrast that with Jimmy Carter, who ran as an outsider indebted to no one. Well, that meant no one was indebted to him, and he had no favors to call in.
Beyond gifts, the rule also applies to concessions, which gives us the door-in-the-face technique.
Right. You start by making a huge request, one you know will be rejected.
That's the door in the face.
Then you retreat to the smaller request that you actually wanted all along. The key is your retreat is seen as a concession, and the other person feels an obligation to make a concession of their own.
Which is to say yes to your smaller request.
And it brilliantly combines reciprocity with the contrast principle. The smaller request seems even smaller by comparison. This is exactly what happened with the Watergate plan.
G. Gordon Liddy's final plan, the one that got approved, was for $250,000.
Which was still an insane plan, but it only got approved because he had first proposed a $1 million plan with kidnapping and sabotage.
Which was rejected.
Then he proposed a $500,000 plan, also rejected. By the time he got to the $250,000 plan, the committee felt pressured. He had conceded so much they felt they had to give him something. It seemed like a reasonable compromise.
But it was only reasonable by contrast.
Exactly. The one person who wasn't at the first two meetings saw the final plan for what it was, a clunker, and objected. He hadn't been influenced by the contrast and the concessions.
Okay, that leads to the next one, which is just as powerful. Commitment and consistency.
This is our obsessive need to be and to appear consistent with what we have already done. Once we make a choice, we feel this internal pressure to stick with it.
Why are we so driven by that?
Well, consistency is seen as a good trait. It's associated with being rational, trustworthy, stable. But more importantly, it's a mental shortcut. It's an escape hatch from hard thinking.
Once I've decided, I can just turn on the consistency tape, and I don't have to grapple with those harsh consequences of straight thinking anymore.
Right. It shields us from troublesome realizations, like the realization that we might have been wrong. So the goal for a compliance professional is just to get that initial commitment, even a tiny one.
The foot in the door technique.
That's it. You start small. Researchers asked homeowners to put a tiny 3-inch square sign in their window supporting safe driving. Almost everyone agreed.
A small, easy commitment. But what it did was subtly change their self-image. Now they saw themselves as civic-minded citizens.
So 2 weeks later, when a different researcher asked them to put a huge, ugly, drive carefully billboard on their front lawn,
they were much more likely to say yes.
Way more likely. Not because they liked the sign, but because they had to act consistently with this new identity they had accepted. It's a theft of identity.
And the commitment works best if it's active, public, and requires effort. Writing something down is huge.
This was the basis of the psychological programs used on American POWs in Korea. They didn't start by asking for military secrets. They started small. Just write down one thing that's not perfect about America.
A statement that's easy to agree with.
But once it was written down, especially if it was then read aloud or posted publicly, the consistency principle kicked in. The prisoner had to start aligning his beliefs with his actions, generating his own justifications. It was a far more powerful form of brainwashing than any overt pressure.
This theft of identity is what makes lowballing so effective, especially with money, like in a car dealership.
The dealer gives you an amazing price, an offer that's too good to be true, just to get you to make the decision, to commit.
And once you've decided, yes, I'm buying this car, you start to feel good about it. You start generating your own new reasons.
I love the color, the gas mileage is great, my friend's always so impressed. You build a whole support structure for the choice.
And then the dealer comes back and says, oh, sorry, my manager caught a mistake in the calculation. The price is actually $400 higher.
And very often, the buyer agrees to the higher price because the original inducement, the low price, is gone. But the decision now stands on that whole raft of new justifications the buyer built for themselves.
Sarah's devotion to Tim was an emotional lowball. The promises were the inducement. When they were removed, her commitment remained because she had built her own new reasons.
Her bad choice became a good choice through her own mental work. It's a closed loop.
All right, next up is social proof. The idea that we figure out what to do by looking at what other people are doing.
A hugely important shortcut. Most of the time, if everyone around you is doing something, it's probably the right thing to do. It makes fewer mistakes than going against the crowd.
But the vulnerability is that it opens us up to fake or incomplete social evidence. It steals our critical thought.
It's why canned laughter on sitcoms works. Intellectually, we all know it's fake. It's not real people laughing.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. The sound of laughter is the trigger, and we respond mechanically. Studies show we laugh longer and rate bad jokes as funnier when there's a laugh track. We're like the turkey responding to the cheep cheep.
And our reliance on this gets much stronger when we're uncertain.
Absolutely. When a situation is ambiguous, we immediately look to others to define reality for us. Is that person on the sidewalk having a heart attack, or are they just drunk?
And this leads to that terrifying phenomenon, pluralistic ignorance.
Yes. In a group of strangers, nobody wants to be the one who overreacts, so everyone tries to look calm and unflustered.
So you look around, you see nobody else is panicking.
And you conclude that since nobody is acting, it must not be an emergency. Everyone is reading the same inaction from everyone else as proof that everything is fine.
This is what happened in the Kitty Genovese murder case. All those people heard or saw the attack, but no one called the police because they assumed someone else must have, or that it wasn't as serious as it seemed.
It wasn't apathy, it was uncertainty. In an emergency, you have to break that cycle. Don't just shout for help. Point to one person. You, in the blue jacket, call 911. You have to reduce their uncertainty.
And the proof is strongest when it comes from people who are similar to us.
That's a critical point. The actions of people who share our identity or age are far more influential.
Like the little boy Chris, who was afraid to swim.
Right. His father, a former lifeguard, couldn't get him in the pool. But then Chris saw his friend Tommy, who was also 3 years old, swimming without a floaty.
And he immediately jumped in.
Because the social proof was from someone just like him. If Tommy can do it, I can do it.
On a much darker note, this explains the Werther effect of copycat suicides.
It does. After a highly publicized suicide, there's a measurable spike in fatal accidents, car crashes, plane crashes in that area.
And the demographics match.
Uncannily. If the suicide victim was young, you see a spike in young people dying in single-car accidents. People are modeling the behavior of similar others, even tragically.
And the most extreme example of social proof in an uncertain environment has to be Jonestown.
It's the ultimate case study. By moving the whole group to an alien jungle in Guyana, they were completely cut off. Their only point of reference, the only similar others they had, was the group itself.
So their reliance on the group for social proof became absolute.
And when things started to go wrong, when the prophecies failed, they couldn't just admit they'd made a catastrophic mistake. That would violate the consistency principle. Instead, they had to double down, convince outsiders to make their threatened beliefs feel truer.
Which set the stage for the mass suicide. The only proof available was the action of everyone else in that sealed environment.
It was a catastrophic psychological trap.
Let's move to a trigger that feels a bit simpler on the surface. Liking.
Right. We prefer to say yes to the requests of people we know and like. It's a good shortcut because our friends are less likely to cheat us.
But it hijacks our objective judgment, especially around money, because an emotional connection can override a rational value assessment.
The Tupperware party is the perfect compliance setting. The genius of it is that you're not really buying from Tupperware. You're buying from your friend, the hostess.
And you feel this social pressure to support her.
Studies show the strength of that friendship is often twice as important in the purchase decision as whether you even like the product. You're buying the relationship, not the plastic containers.
And one of the fastest ways to generate liking is the halo effect.
Just being physically attractive, we subconsciously assign all kinds of positive traits like kindness, honesty, intelligence to good-looking people.
The impact on politics and the justice system is pretty shocking.
It's huge. Attractive political candidates get 2.5 times more votes. Attractive defendants are twice as likely to avoid jail time, and voters and jurors will swear up and down that appearance had nothing to do with their decision.
Another factor is similarity. We like people who are like us.
And compliance professionals work hard to manufacture that similarity. The hippie experiment is a great example. Protest marchers would sign a petition from someone dressed like them without even reading it. The similarity was the only trigger they needed.
It all comes together in the good cop, bad cop routine.
It's a masterclass. The bad cop creates the threat and contrast. Then the good cop comes in and saves the suspect.
He offers a coffee, which triggers reciprocity.
He seems so reasonable compared to the bad cop, which is the contrast principle, but the real key is liking. He positions himself as being on the suspect's side as a trusted confidant.
And that manufactured trust and liking is what produces the confession.
Finally, there's just simple association. We connect products or people to the things they're associated with. Weathermen get hate mail when the weather is bad.
Even though they have nothing to do with it.
Right. And advertisers constantly link their products with positive things. The attractive models next to the car in the ad make the car itself seem more appealing, faster, better designed. The positive qualities just transfer over subconsciously.
All right, that brings us to authority. This one feels like the most dangerous.
It might be. It's our deep-seated sense of duty to obey authority figures. And as a shortcut, it's usually great. Experts and leaders often do know best.
But the danger is that it can cause us to, as Cialdini says, unhook our professional intelligences. It steals our critical thought.
The Milgram experiments are the most terrifying demonstration of this. Ordinary people, just like you, were willing to deliver what they thought were extremely painful, even dangerous electric shocks to another person.
Why?
Simply because a man in a lab coat, an authority figure, told them to. The experiment requires that you continue. That was enough.
They weren't sadists. They were distressed. They wanted to stop.
They were sweating and trembling, but 2/3 of them went all the way to the 450-volt switch. It was just an automatic compliance tape running over their own moral compass.
And this mindless deference shows up in professional settings, like hospitals.
It can be lethal. Nurses will follow a doctor's orders, even when they're obviously wrong, because the authority of the doctor just switches off their own critical judgment.
The rectal earache story is the perfect example.
It's absurd but true. The doctor wrote a prescription for eardrops with the abbreviation place in ear. The nurse read it as place in rear and administered the eardrops rectally.
And neither the nurse nor the patient questioned this bizarre instruction.
Because a legitimate authority has spoken, what makes logical sense becomes irrelevant.
So it's not even real authority we respond to, but the symbols of authority.
That's the key. A title like doctor, clothes, like a uniform or a sharp suit. These symbols can trigger our compliance even if there's no substance behind them. Con artists live on this principle.
And to seem more credible, an authority might even seem to argue against their own interest.
The waiter, Vincent, was a pro at this. A customer would order something and he'd say, "No, that's not as good tonight. I'd recommend this other dish, which is slightly cheaper."
So he instantly establishes himself as a trustworthy expert who has your best interests at heart.
And once that credibility is established, when he then recommends the most expensive bottle of wine and the priciest dessert, you trust him completely. His small initial act of honesty allows him to hijack your spending later on.
Okay, next trigger. Scarcity. Opportunities seem more valuable when there are fewer of them.
Right. The shortcut is that things that are hard to get are usually better than things that are easy to get, but it operates on a very emotional level. It steals our rationality and self-control.
This is the engine of FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Absolutely. Limited time offer, only 2 left in stock. These tactics are designed to short-circuit our rational brain by creating an emotional arousal around the threat of loss.
And this threat of loss taps into something Cialdini calls psychological reactance.
It's our instinct to resist any restrictions on our freedoms. The moment you tell us we can't have something, we want it more. This is the terrible twos. It's why teenagers fall more in love when their parents try to keep them apart. The Romeo and Juliet effect.
The restriction itself becomes the source of the desire.
We even start assigning new positive qualities to the forbidden item. When Dade County banned phosphate detergents, people started smuggling them in from other counties and became convinced that the banned soaps were better cleaners, whitened better, even poured more easily.
The product hadn't changed at all.
Only its availability. And this works with information, too. The moment you censor a speech, people become more sympathetic to its message, even without hearing it. The act of censorship itself lends the information credibility.
So when is scarcity most powerful?
Two optimal conditions. First, when something has recently become scarce. A drop from abundance is much more triggering than something that was always rare. This is why revolutions often follow a period of rising prosperity that is suddenly curtailed.
And second?
When we have to compete with others for it. Rivalry turns us from rational actors into panicked buyers. The car salesman who brings in a second buyer for the same car knows this. Your casual consideration instantly becomes a frantic need to close the deal before the other person gets it.
The last of the original triggers is unity. This is a newer one Cialdini added. It's about shared identity, the we factor.
It's about complying with people who aren't just similar to us, but who we feel are of us. They're in our tribe. This shortcut is about group survival, but it can cost us our individual will.
And one of the most powerful ways to build this unity is through effortful initiation, hazing rituals, military boot camps.
The more pain and trouble someone goes through to join a group, the more they will value that group. It's a commitment and consistency trap for identity.
The college women's study showed this.
Right. The women who endured a severely embarrassing initiation to join a discussion group later rated that group as being extremely valuable and interesting.
Even though the researchers had deliberately made the group boring and worthless.
They had to. Their minds couldn't accept the idea that they suffered for nothing. So the suffering itself created the value. It locks in the group's identity over the individual's direct experience.
We also see this in how people talk about sports teams, burgeoning and corfing.
Basking in reflected glory and cutting off reflected failure. When the team wins, fans say, "We won." They share in the identity of the victory.
But when the team loses,
It's "they lost." They immediately distance their identity from the failure. We use the group's performance to regulate our own sense of self-worth. Our individual perspective gets hijacked by the group's public narrative.
so these triggers are clearly powerful. Yet if you ask someone if they were influenced by them, they almost always deny it. Why is there this architecture of denial?
It really comes down to ego. Admitting that you bought the car because of a lowball trick or voted for the candidate because they were attractive is to admit a loss of rational control.
It undermines your identity as a smart, autonomous person.
Exactly, so we attribute our compliance to other things. I just really liked the car. I felt their policies were better. We see our actions as being determined by natural forces, not by the design of the person who just influenced us.
And that denial goes back to the idea of consistency being a shield against thought.
It is. The autopilot lets us get on with our lives without the toil of having to think too much. And the real fear isn't the effort of thinking, it's the harsh consequences that might come from it.
The unwelcome answer.
The unwelcome answer that you made a mistake, that you wasted your time, that you still have a problem to solve. It's often psychologically cheaper to maintain the illusion of a good choice than to face a difficult truth.
Okay, so we can't get rid of these automatic tapes. We need them. So how do we defend against them being exploited? Cialdini offers a filter, right? A way to see it happening.
He does. He offers two internal signals that can act as a diagnostic tool. A way to separate a real choice from a triggered reflex.
Let's do the first signal.
The first one is visceral. He calls it the stomach tightening. It's that feeling you get deep in the pit of your stomach when you realize you're being trapped into saying yes to something you don't actually want.
So it's a gut feeling, literally.
It's your body's alarm bell. It goes off specifically when you're being cornered by a reciprocity or a commitment and consistency trap.
Yep.
You feel this pressure from your own past statements or a social obligation.
He felt this himself with the entertainment club membership.
Right. The salesperson got him to agree in a survey that he was a very social person who liked to go out. Then they hit him with the sales pitch. He felt his stomach tighten because he knew if he said no, he'd either look like a liar or a fool for passing up a good deal.
So that feeling is the signal.
That tightening is a nonverbal message from your gut saying, hey, you're being taken here. It's the moment to pause before your brain starts building the rationalizations.
But what if you miss that moment?
Yeah.
What if the rationalizations have already started?
That's where the second signal comes in. He calls this the heart of hearts test. This is for when your brain is already working overtime to justify the decision.
Like Sarah convincing herself she loved Tim more than ever.
Exactly. The psychological evidence says that we have a pure emotional feeling about something a split second before our intellect kicks in. The trick is to listen to that first flash of feeling.
And the question to ask is,
Knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time, would I make the same choice?
and you have to trust the very first answer that pops into your head.
Before the justifications rush in. When Cialdini was tricked into pulling into a gas station with a low price on the sign, only to find the pump price was higher, his brain started justifying it. I'm already here, I need gas, it's only a few cents more.
But when he asked his heart of hearts,
The answer was a clear, instant no. He would have driven right past. And that told him everything. Those justifications didn't create his decision was creating them. That's the filter. It separates what you really want from what you've been cornered into wanting.
and of course all of this was written before the world we live in now, how do these principles escalate in the age of algorithms?
They escalate exponentially. The central problem Cialdini identified, that life is moving too fast for our cognitive capacity, is 1,000 times truer today. We are more rushed, more overloaded, and more dependent on those cheap shortcuts than ever.
Which makes us more vulnerable?
Much more. And the critical difference now is the rise of counterfeit signals. Algorithms are perfectly designed to create fake triggers at a massive scale.
So fake social proof.
Fake product reviews, inflated follower counts, so-and-so just bought this item, pop-ups. It's the digital equivalent of canned laughter. And it works because they know we're too busy to check the data.
And engineered scarcity.
Only 3 seats left at this price? Countdown timers that just reset if you refresh the page. They are intentionally engineering the digital environment to trigger our psychological reactance and force a quick emotional decision.
It's the difference between cooperative influence, which helps you make a shortcut, and exploitative influence, which uses a fraudulent shortcut to trick you.
Exactly. And the only real defense is knowing these principles. Recognizing the track is the first and most important step to disarming it. You have to be able to pause and check the machine against reality.
Once you can see the architecture, you get your choice back.
You regain your agency.
This book isn't about controlling people.
It's about how control happens quietly inside ordinary life.
Cialdini doesn't describe evil.
He describes default settings.
And once you can see the triggers, you stop confusing reactions with choices.
If this episode made you notice the moment you almost said yes, the decoding worked.
And if you want to keep seeing beneath the surface, one book at a time, subscribe to Decoded by Morrow.
We don't replace books. We decode them.
A book on the shelf is just paper. A book in your mind is power.
You've reached the end of this exploration, but not the end of the idea. Let it echo. Let it integrate. And when you're ready for the next step, return to Decoded by Morrow. Wisdom is a journey, not a conclusion. Let's decode.